Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we bring you heartwarming and thought-provoking tales that challenge our understanding of love, courage, and the bonds that connect us all. Today's story will take you deep into the wilderness, where an unexpected guardian changes everything for a young boy. Prepare to be amazed by this extraordinary tale of survival and compassion. The mountain roads of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, were treacherous that cold and misty evening. The Collins family SUV crept along the winding path, the rhythmic swish of the wipers battling against the heavy rain that had transformed the once gentle drizzle into sheets of water, obscuring Michael Collins's vision. His grip on the steering wheel was tight, his knuckles white from the tension that had built up after hours of driving on this isolated road. Sarah, sitting beside him, stared ahead, her own nerves frayed as they neared the remote cabin they had planned to stay in for the weekend. "Maybe we should pull over," Sarah suggested softly, her voice nearly drowned by the sound of the rain hammering against the windshield. Michael shook his head, unwilling to stop. "We're almost there. Just a few more miles," he replied, his voice a mixture of fatigue and determination. They'd been driving for hours, the winding roads and dense trees creating a sense of isolation that made Sarah uneasy. Their son, Noah, 2 years old and oblivious to the tension in the front seat, slept peacefully in the back, his tiny breath steady and undisturbed by the chaos unfolding outside. As they rounded a sharp bend, disaster struck. The tires, slick with the rain, lost their grip on the wet asphalt. The SUV skidded uncontrollably, spinning wildly as Michael fought to regain control. But it was too late. The vehicle veered off the road and down a steep embankment, flipping several times before crashing against the trunk of a massive pine tree. The sound of twisting metal and shattering glass drowned out everything else. And for a moment, there was only silence. The first to stir was Noah. His soft whimpering echoed through the wreckage, a sound that seemed impossibly small against the stillness of the forest. The toddler, still securely strapped in his car seat, had been thrown into confusion by the sudden chaos. Michael and Sarah, however, remained unconscious, trapped in the mangled wreckage. Blood trickled from a gash on Michael's forehead, while Sarah's arm was bent in a way that suggested it was broken. Neither parent could provide the reassurance Noah needed. They were helpless. As the minutes ticked by, the only sounds were Noah's increasing cries and the gentle patter of rain on the leaves. But soon, something else began to stir in the darkness. In the far distance, a large figure lumbered through the forest. The bear, a massive grizzly, had been drawn by the sounds of distress and the unmistakable scent of blood. Its instincts, honed over years in the wilderness, guided it toward the wreckage. The bear emerged from the shadows, its thick fur rippling with each step, its powerful muscles moving in a graceful rhythm. It paused momentarily, sniffing the air, its keen senses picking up the smell of gasoline, rubber, and blood. The animal moved closer, each step calculated as it approached the wrecked SUV. Inside, Noah's cries had stopped, replaced with wide-eyed curiosity. The toddler stared at the enormous creature, his fears seemingly held in check by the fascination of such a majestic being so close. With surprising gentleness, the bear approached the shattered window, its massive nose twitching as it inhaled the strange scents. The vehicle was ruined, the door crumpled and beyond use. But the bear's instincts kicked in. With a push of its powerful paws, the animal pried the door open, gently sniffing Noah, who remained still, transfixed by the bear's presence. Then, in an act that defied all natural instincts, the grizzly carefully extracted Noah's car seat from the wreckage, cradling the toddler in its powerful jaws. The bear, with extraordinary care, turned and made its way back into the forest, Noah still secured in his seat, safe in the care of his unlikely protector. By the time the first emergency vehicles arrived hours later, the crash site was eerily quiet, save for the occasional chirp of a bird or rustle of leaves. Michael and Sarah were eventually rescued, their injuries severe but not life-threatening. The emergency workers, however, faced a chilling discovery. Noah was gone. Panic set in as they combed the wreckage, only to find no trace of the toddler. The tracks left behind were unmistakable, leading away from the wreckage and into the dense forest. Large bear tracks were scattered throughout the area, suggesting something unimaginable. A bear had taken Noah. The realization was too horrific to process. But the search was about to begin, and no one could have guessed that the miraculous journey of young Noah Collins was only just beginning. The search for Noah Collins began with urgency, but no one knew where to begin. As morning broke, the town of Jackson Hole was alive with the activity of volunteers organizing into search parties. The air was thick with anxiety as the community rallied together, praying for a miracle. Helicopters flew overhead while ground teams, led by experienced trackers, combed the dense forest surrounding the crash site. But all the while, deep in the heart of the wilderness, an unlikely guardian watched over the boy. The grizzly bear, having carefully transported Noah away from the wreckage, made its way deep into the forest. The forest was a labyrinth of trees and underbrush, but the bear moved through it with ease. The weight of the car seat in its jaws a small concern in the face of its instincts. The animal knew this land well, its domain, and the bear carried Noah to a secluded cave far from the reach of human eyes. Inside the cave, the bear set the car seat down gently, placing it on a bed of soft moss and leaves. Despite the extraordinary circumstances, Noah showed no fear. His tiny hands, still clutching the straps of his car seat, reached out to touch the bear. There was a strange, unspoken connection between them, an inexplicable trust. The bear, so often feared by humans, now showed an unusual gentleness, its massive paws not lashing out but instead moving slowly, as though understanding the child before it. The rain continued to pour outside, but inside the cave, a warm calmness seemed to settle. The bear circled the space with a watchful gaze, occasionally sniffing Noah and growling softly as if to assure the boy of his safety. The toddler, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination, began to feel more comfortable. The bear, sensing this, lay down nearby, allowing Noah to explore the cave cautiously. As the hours passed, Noah slowly began to mimic the bear's actions, crawling on all fours, just like his protector, his innocent curiosity guiding him. By the time the first light of dawn filtered into the cave, the bond between the two was undeniable. The bear had already left and returned several times, bringing berries and roots from the forest, placing them carefully in front of Noah. The toddler, hungry but not distressed, ate the strange meal without hesitation, as though this moment had always been meant to be. The bear's behavior was unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed. It was as though it was taking care of Noah, nurturing him, ensuring that he was comfortable and safe. Back in Jackson, as the search efforts grew more frantic, no one knew where to turn next. The ground team, led by Jack Dawson, a seasoned hunter and tracker with an intimate knowledge of the mountains, was scouring the dense underbrush. Jack had been with the search efforts since the very beginning, and though his instincts told him something wasn't right, the bear tracks only added to the confusion. A grizzly bear wouldn't take a human child. They were predators. After all, the possibility seemed absurd. But Jack couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the search was heading towards something extraordinary. Hours passed, and the storm raged on. As Jack navigated the harsh terrain, he couldn't help but think about the legends of the area. He had heard stories, passed down through generations of Native Americans, about spirit bears, creatures that were believed to protect lost children. Jack had always dismissed these stories as mere folklore. But now, as he stumbled upon another bear track that seemed to defy all logic, he couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to them. Noah, nestled in the cave, was unaware of the search closing in on him. For him, the days passed as a strange but peaceful rhythm. The bear continued to watch over him, its presence a quiet assurance in the wilds. As the night approached, with Jack's hunches leading him deeper into the forest, the miracle that had begun the moment Noah was taken from the crash site continued to unfold. one that no one could have expected, but one that would change the course of Jackson Hole forever. As dawn broke over the rugged mountains, a renewed sense of urgency swept over the search party. The helicopters that had been combing the wilderness since first light, now flying low with their searchlights scanning the ground, seemed to only add to the tension in the air. Despite their best efforts, the searchers had yet to find any concrete trace of Noah, and the growing realization that the child could be somewhere in the forest with a wild bear began to haunt every volunteer. Meanwhile, deep in the heart of the wilderness, Jack Dawson's instincts were pushing him further into the mountains. Jack was a man who had spent most of his life in these forests, his tracking skills unparalleled. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he was beginning to believe. A bear had taken Noah. Jack had seen the tracks, the large, heavy imprints left by a grizzly, strangely mixed with the smaller footprints of a child. He was struggling to process it, but there was something undeniable about the path he was following. The signs were there, even if it seemed impossible. His radio crackled with the voice of his colleague, warning him about the storm rolling in. But Jack was already beyond the reach of common reason, pushing himself deeper into the unforgiving terrain. Driven by something more than just his training, his instincts told him that something extraordinary was unfolding here, a story of survival that went beyond the physical. There was a connection happening between a child and a wild creature, one that couldn't be explained by simple logic. As he made his way up a narrow ridge, Jack found himself reflecting on the old legends. His grandfather had told him stories of the guardian bears, ancient creatures that were believed to have a spiritual connection with certain humans. The thought had always seemed far-fetched to him. But now, as he followed the faint trail of broken twigs and disturbed earth, Jack couldn't dismiss the possibility that what he was chasing was more than a bear's footprints in the mud. Meanwhile, in the cave, Noah remained completely unaware of the storm rolling over the mountains. The bear, too, sensed the change in the weather, but it remained calm, its massive form gently curled around the small child, offering him warmth and protection. Noah, though confused, had come to trust the creature completely. The boy's innate sense of wonder and curiosity seemed to feed off the bear's calmness, and slowly, he had begun to mimic its every movement. The bond that had formed between them was undeniable. When the bear left the cave, Noah followed it, watching as it foraged for berries and roots. As the hours passed, Noah began to copy the bear, pulling at the roots from the ground and tasting the berries, learning from his protector in a way that was both innocent and profound. As the day wore on, Jack found himself following the trail further up into the mountains, his mind racing with thoughts of what he might find. He had tracked many animals over the years, but this was different. This was no ordinary bear, and certainly no ordinary child. The relationship that was unfolding between the two was nothing short of miraculous. By the time the storm began to grow heavier, Jack was nearing a place that felt more familiar to him, an area in the forest that was known to have a series of caves. As he pushed forward, his heart raced, sensing that he was close to uncovering the truth. But even he, with all his years of experience, could never have prepared himself for what he would find. Back in Jackson, as the search team continued to fight the storm, the townspeople were on edge. The growing reports of a bear near the crash site only deepened the anxiety in the air. But the one thing that everyone agreed on was that no one needed to be found, no matter the cost. And, deep in the forest, the incredible story of survival, companionship, and the wild bond between a bear and a child continued to unfold, bringing with it an impossible hope. As the storm raged on in Jackson, the search for Noah Collins had reached a critical point. The weather had worsened, and visibility was near zero. The searchers, now working in shifts, could barely make out the trail markers or their surroundings through the thick veil of rain and wind. The situation was growing dire, and Jack Dawson felt the weight of every passing minute. With each step through the muddy forest, his thoughts raced. Something incredible had happened here, a child and a grizzly bear, a relationship that defied all natural instincts. But there was no time to dwell on the absurdity of it. He had to find them. The forest seemed endless, and Jack's mind, though experienced in the ways of the wild, was beginning to falter. Every broken branch, every faint scent in the air made him wonder. Was it too late? Would he be able to track them through the wilderness? Find Noah before the storm overtook them both? Yet, Jack's instincts never wavered, pushing him forward, despite the uncertainty. Meanwhile, in the safety of their cave, Noah was far from the chaos. The bear, his protector, seemed to have taken on a role that was both nurturing and instinctively protective. The bond between them deepened with every moment that passed. The bear, though a powerful force in the wild, showed tenderness that no one could have expected. As the storm thundered on outside, Noah huddled against the animal's warmth, the sound of the bear's deep grunts soothing his fears. The boy had come to trust the grizzly completely. When the bear ventured out to search for food, Noah would watch carefully, attempting to mimic the bear's movements. His little hands reached out to dig through the damp earth, trying to pull roots or pick berries. Just as the bear did, it was as though Noah had learned to become part of the wilderness, adapting to the strange, beautiful world that had taken him in. As night approached, Noah's eyes began to flutter closed. The rhythmic sounds of the bear's breathing seemed to lull him into a peaceful sleep, despite the tension and fear that had consumed him hours before. He had known fear, but now there was only comfort in the presence of the bear. The child had found solace not just in the animal's warmth, but in the quiet understanding that seemed to pass between them. Wordlessly, just as Noah began to drift off, the sound of distant footsteps reached the bear's sensitive ears. The massive animal lifted its head, its alert eyes scanning the entrance to the cave. The bear's body tensed, preparing to protect the child. But when Noah stirred, reaching out to the bear's massive paw with his tiny hand, the animal relaxed. It understood. It was not a threat. The bear responded with a gentle nudge, as if reassuring the child, allowing Noah to settle once more. Back in Jackson, the search teams had gathered what little information they could from the storm-ravaged landscape. Jack Dawson had been missing for hours, and the search for him was now a priority. But despite their best efforts, no one had found any sign of the child. That was until Jack's radio crackled through the storm, breaking the silence of the forest. "Jack, do you copy?" The voice of his fellow tracker echoed through the static. "I've found something," Jack's voice replied. Though it was hard to tell if he was speaking to himself or to the team, he had found them. The tracks were clearer now, and with every step, his heart seemed to beat in sync with the trail beneath his feet. Jack had found Noah alive, and, unbelievably, the boy was not alone. At that moment, Jack knew that whatever happened next, the bond between the child and the bear would change the course of everything. What was once thought to be a simple rescue was now something much deeper. It was a story of trust, of an unlikely protector and a child who had come to understand the wild in a way no one could have imagined. The storm had begun to subside when Jack Dawson reached the cave, but the air was still thick with tension. He moved cautiously, every step a careful consideration of how to approach the strange and unlikely bond unfolding before him. The search had taken hours, but here, in the heart of the wilderness, Jack had found more than just a child in peril. He had found a story that defied logic and overturned everything he knew about the animal world. The thought of Noah's tiny hand brushing against the bear's fur, the boy's innocent trust in such a creature, filled him with awe. And now, as the cave's entrance loomed just ahead, Jack could hear the sound of breathing, deep, powerful, and rhythmic. The bear was close. Jack signaled to the rest of the team to stay back, keeping their distance from the cave. The last thing he wanted was for the bear to feel threatened. He slowly moved forward, his heart pounding as the light from his flashlight illuminated the massive form of the grizzly. Inside the cave, Noah stirred, blinking as he began to wake from his slumber. The scene was surreal. Noah, sitting calmly beside the bear, his hand still clutching a tuft of the grizzly's fur. For a moment, Jack just watched, struck by the quiet connection between the child and the animal. Then, as if sensing the presence of the intruder. The bear lifted its head, its dark eyes locking on Jack's with a level of intelligence that stopped him in his tracks. It wasn't a simple wild animal. It was something else. Something more. Jack had seen bears before, in all their power and majesty. But nothing compared to the calmness in the animal's gaze now. There was no aggression, no fear, just an understanding, something ancient and deep. As though the bear knew that Jack's intentions were not to harm, but to help. "Noah," Jack whispered softly, his voice steady but filled with wonder. "It's time to come home, buddy." He took a careful step forward, not wanting to startle the bear, but also knowing that no one needed to return to his parents. The bear watched him closely, its body language indicating a quiet reluctance, as if it too recognized the moment of separation was coming. Noah, still groggy from his nap, looked up at Jack with tired eyes, then turned to the bear. A series of low, soft grunts passed between them. Noah's familiar communication, the language he had developed with his protector. The bear rumbled in response, its massive head lowering toward the child's face, as if saying goodbye. But there was no fear in Noah's eyes, only trust, as he slowly climbed to his feet, giving the bear one last touch before slowly walking toward the entrance of the cave. The sight of the small boy walking out of the cave, side by side with the grizzly, was a moment that struck every person present like a bolt of lightning. The searchers, now gathered at the cave entrance, could scarcely believe what they were witnessing. The grizzly, the very same animal that had been considered a danger to the town, was calmly escorting Noah, its tiny protector. Noah paused just outside the cave, turning back to the bear one last time. "Bear happy," he said softly, his voice filled with a gentle warmth that contrasted with the situation. He placed his tiny hand on the bear's fur, a final gesture of affection. And with that, the bear turned away, lumbering back into the forest, leaving Noah standing in the sunlight, his parents rushing forward to embrace him. Michael and Sarah Collins reached their son with tears in their eyes, relief flooding their hearts as they pulled him close. The family reunion was filled with emotion, their joy tempered by the extraordinary circumstances surrounding it. But as they clung to Noah, there was a look of sadness in his eyes as he turned back to the bear. The connection had been formed, and the boy was not yet ready to say goodbye. Wildlife officials, who had been watching from a distance, began to move in, preparing to tranquilize and relocate the bear. But Jack Dawson stepped forward, his voice calm yet firm. "Wait," he called out. "This bear saved that child's life. It protected him when it could have easily done the opposite. We owe it more than this." His words caused everyone to pause. The debate over the bear's fate had been complicated. But now, in light of what had transpired, there was a new layer of complexity to the situation. Was it right to take this animal away from its home, from the child it had protected? The question lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. The debate would continue. But for the moment, the bear's place in the story had been written. As Noah, once again safely in his parents' arms, looked out toward the forest, he whispered softly, "Bear home." In that quiet moment, the miracle that had unfolded in the wilderness began to feel like something much bigger than just a story of survival. It was a reminder that even in the most unlikely circumstances, a bond could form, one that bridged the gap between two worlds, human and animal. And as the sun began to set over Jackson, a new chapter was about to begin, one that would change not only the lives of those who witnessed it, but the entire town and perhaps even the world. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. The bond between Noah and his unlikely protector is a testament to the power of trust, empathy, and the wild beauty of nature. If you were touched by this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales right here on Empathy Stories.